We're gonna get started with our continued session. Our next speaker is from Microsoft, Sean Gimberline. Sean Gimberline is a digital solutions specialist at Microsoft with over 20 years of IT experience, with a diverse background working in manufacturing, public sector, financial, healthcare, and information technology companies. His work has largely been focused on email administration and security. To maintain systems over the years, this focus grew into overall compliance and security in organization environments. Sean holds a bachelor's degree from Fort Hays State University in information technology and currently working towards a master's degree in information security and compliance. Sean, it's great to have you here, and the floor is yours.
We get the share going. All right. Okay. Well, I don't know who I made mad to get the lunch period. See how many of you snooze off on me today. Let's see. Uh, see a couple laughs. So I'm here and I'm just going to kind of give a generic conversation as we look at security, kind of where we were before, what we're looking at now, some stats, some stuff, and a little bit of the future. Not a whole lot. We've hit a lot of it, and you're going to see similar themes through this, through everything you've heard. A lot of what Jamie had talked about earlier, and some on Dr. Kim as well, of where we were coming with security through the ages on this. So, all right, let's see if we can get it to advance. Obviously me that he just talked about, so we don't need to go much over here. And where did the IT security start? And so here we're going to just take a look at where our initial IT security was at, right? We've got a mainframe. We've got a terminal. And what did we do? We had physical security. That was enough. We didn't have people tailgating in. We might have had some identity on it. Maybe somebody logged in, but a lot of times it was just somebody sitting at the terminal and being able to go at it and have fun. And this is a security professional. You were more worried about making sure somebody wasn't touching something and you had the process going through it, that you were able to set things up like this and keep it separated from from the people around doing stuff. We also had file cabinets, right, that we locked everything in. Everything got printed off if we had it, and it got stuck in a filing cabinet and moved on. So our next step in here we start looking at is our LAN and WAN. It's a very basic network diagram there where we threw just a firewall up in it, right? So we've got a firewall we threw here in this. So what we're looking at when our users started getting file servers and we started getting this network where we could talk together. And we might have email. I mean, this was back when we couldn't send anything over like a meg if we were lucky, We had to have tiny files and no one really cared that, hey, somebody had an H drive that they'd had, 100 credit card numbers in, or everybody's social security number was saved on a drive somewhere. It didn't seem to matter at this point because we didn't have people coming in and going for it, and it needed to be worked on. So we've got just this firewall here, and you may have let a few people out to come out to the internet, but not everyone even knew what the internet was at that time. Maybe you got a telnet out and do a MUD or something if you were having fun. At this point in time, right, we're looking at a bunch of stuff of just, hey, your email client's Pine, right? You've got no images, you've got nothing in there. And so, maybe we've got some DLP on there. Once we actually start getting people hitting web services, hey, we've got proxy servers, so we're trying to block a few things, but it was the time of Flash and the time of having fun and watching the dancing hamsters and stuff. Eventually we come up with a slight change here where we add our DMZ area in this, right? And this is because all of a sudden all of our organizations decided, hey, we need to have a web presence. We need to be out there. We need to deliver something to customers that are going to come in and see us. And so as we're sitting here in this DMZ, we start adding more stuff, right? We're starting to add more security. We're still taking care of this physical idea. We're taking care of identity because now I care that you're John Doe, or I care that you're Mary Sue, or I care who you are coming in because I'm locking you to certain files as it goes through. I'm making sure that you're not sending anything out. We're looking on our mail servers to make sure that we're stopping it, whether malicious or accidentally. We've got our firewall and proxy servers, both sides, preventing stuff from coming in and going out. Again, that DMZ screen network. And then the next step we started looking at was our administrators, the CEOs, the CXOs, everyone was like, hey, I got to come in and work, but I don't want to leave the house, right? You know, this was when we started getting a gig line, well, not a 10 meg line. I was like, you know, a 10 meg up, 10 meg down. You thought you were the thing, you know, a little Napster or something, you know, that you could go and hit. But no, our CXOs at this point in time are going, hey, I really want to stay at home. I got this great internet thing, and then I want to come in and be able to do it. So we start getting VPNs set up, and we start coming with more and more and more security to try and circumvent our security to be secure to allow things to happen. And after the CXOs, of course, the administrators were like, hey, I don't want to be on call and have to drive into the office. I don't want to be around. So we started doing a jump server in there and all these other things that we're trying to get up to make sure that we were able to set up security to be able to protect it. And at this point, we're still using like an H drive, you know, and the end user's got creditcard.xls still out there, and they're sharing it in a T drive for Teams. And, you know, we've got these on these file servers that are just out there. No one's really, I don't want to say they don't care, but they're not overly worried about it because it's not being seen as something that would affect the organization all that much if that data is out there. We're stopping it from being sent through email because that's the only way we know to do it. And so we're working through that to make sure that it's going. And so what the next step after this that leads us away from this is when we start looking at all our SaaS apps and all the capabilities we have of sharing, G drives, OneNote, OneDrive, Dropbox, all of these things that start coming up start making us need to start looking at ways that we can start protecting this. And here's just a few incidents from, you know, like the 90s on, like we've got a Morris worm. So distributed by the internet, it just caused disruption. We've had Kevin Mitnick, who did a lot of hacking, coming in, looking at things, got arrested. You come down to the Melissa virus and the I love you virus. At this point in time, pretty much it was just VBS scripts that were sent out. People would click on them and all of a sudden it'd replicate through networks. Sure cleared up a bunch of file storage because it rewrote JPEGs from whatever size they were down to like 14K because all it was a quick VBS script that ran through. With those, you were looking at trying to protect your network with something as simple as this point of putting McAfee, putting CrowdStrike, putting an antivirus on your machines that would allow you to come in and just stop that VBS from going, for even turning off, you know, OpenWidth. So a lot of these attacks that had come through, these ones started setting up to make sure that our security was set up to prevent users from automatically opening stuff, right? To make sure that macros aren't getting used and stuff along those lines to try and make sure that we're not replicating this within an environment and maybe we're losing data. Maybe it's just taking the network down, which depending on what you're looking at and where you're going could be enough to cause problems. We look now at a couple others too, as the Stuxnet, where there was the attack in Iran that happened, nation state based, to shut down the nuclear, not the reactors, but the refiners. Look at the SolarWinds attack. This one is a supply chain hack. So it's from the standpoint of, hey, I've got a network. I've done everything I can. I've even put SolarWinds in so I can monitor my network. And now I start finding out that somewhere in that supply chain, something was put within that software that's now made it able to get hacked and people to come in and be able to see my network. At this point in time, it's nothing I've done. It's nothing my organization has done. It's stuff along the lines. And so we start looking, and security-wise, we got to start doing this defense in depth. And Dr. Kim talked a little bit about it in the IoT. Jamie had talked about it and everything, where we're talking about saying, hey, we got to stop each step along the way and try and prevent it, because no matter what we do, we as security folks and we as administrators and we as IT professionals can't just do it from one spot. And so, you know, security is a defining challenge of our time. Obviously, you're all here because you're starting down this track of looking at what we're doing to try to get there, to stop this, to try to be, I don't want to say smarter than, but try to be quicker, faster, more involved to prevent these attacks and this exfiltration, this stopping of our network, that we've got to get it. And it's all the way along the lines that we're going to bring up this huge little, you know, this nice big circle that just starts looking at all of this stuff that we have got to start looking at securing. And, you know, we've heard endpoint protection. This doesn't have IoT on here specifically, but we're looking at the endpoint protection, which will cover all those IoT devices that Dr. Kim had talked about and Waterfall had talked about, stuff that's got to be protected that we may not know anything about. We may have a 30-year-old device on a network that we can't find firmware for, or that still has admin password as the login, or admin blank. My favorite one, you know, you go out to the internet and just put it in. Hey, what's the standard Cisco password? What's the standard Netcom password? What's the standard whatever password? And you start getting these results back that you can just start going out and hitting stuff and finding these open points that you can go in and start grabbing it from networks. We've got cloud apps. There's thousands of cloud apps out there. Do you know what your end users are using? Do you know where they're coming from? All these SaaS apps that get out there. Yeah, we're authenticating them and we're getting into it, but hey, there's a SaaS app every minute, it seems like, that somebody's releasing. Managed services, who's coming in? The general cloud security. Do you have AWS? Do you have Azure? Do you have Google's? You know, are you putting this stuff together? You're running, how are you securing it? How are you making sure that it's not taking data off of one side? Maybe you've got an Oracle database hanging out there in the network somewhere that nobody knows about, that's just feeding stuff out there that you're not finding out. Data governance. This one's the one that always seems to really tie IT down, because we really want to sit down and make sure that we're not losing data, right? We as IT, we're like, hey, we want to make sure we don't ruin anything, we don't get in trouble, nothing makes it out. The hard part is trying to figure out what the business wants with that. We as IT could protect everything, you know, and if we want to save space, hey, we discharge everything after 30 days, you know, 2 months. We want to open space up. We'll be protected if we don't have anything around. Our business, business is not so big on that, you know. Business wants to keep everything forever. And so this is where we start sitting down with lawyers and the business side saying, what's our exposure? What are we trying to do? What do we want to get set up that we can bring in and protect the organization? Because it isn't only that data, it is the whole, it's the whole organization that has a problem that can be in trouble for losing that. And we'd seen some of the, Jamie had presented some about the Equifax, right? Where they lost all that data. You know, it could be one person that accidentally left a password open, left something open, and that comes back to the organization and its reputation, not Sean let it go. And maybe Sean gets in trouble, but Equifax is the one that's having to pay those prices and deal with the reputation hit. And so when we're looking at this, you know, what's making this so hard? These first two are Microsoft, that we do have data. We've shared this out as part of our security advisory. So where we're at is that, you know, password attacks per month. 2022, we saw 3 billion. 2023, that jumped up a tenfold, 30 billion password attacks. That's someone sending out, hey, password 1, P at WSO, all of them. Threat actors. So the Russian hacker that came out and the organization that Jamie was talking about, this is an organization that Microsoft's keeping track of. In 2022, we'd had 200 that they were keeping track of what domains were they using, what were they coming in, how were they attacking, were they using Amazon, were they using AWS or Amazon, were they using Azure, were they using Google? And here's the big one that should be popping eyes in here as people start thinking about it is, hey, there's a shortage. There's a shortage of people that want to sit down and can sit down and do that security, to understand it, to work through it, to figure it out. That 4 million open jobs worldwide is the estimate, and that's from ISC. So that's not something Microsoft made up or Google or anybody else. That is ISC from the industry saying, look, we know that there's a problem here. We know that there's an opening, and we got to get people in these jobs and these roles, really start working through to be able to stop this. And so this comes back to kind of what Jamie was talking about when we're talking about funding and where money's at. Take a look at that. Third largest economy in the world and growing fast. $8 trillion. I mean, that is just ridiculous. And that's all cybercrime, right? So it is a lot of ransomware, but we're also looking at things like standard phishing and hey, email me $1,000, or, I'm the CFO and I'm calling in and I'm asking. GDP annual growth rate, 15%. And these are from Statistica, is where these stats came from. So this is for 2020 or 2023. And so just, I mean, 8 trillion, I'd take 1% of that. I'd take 1% and be happy, right? We'd go home, but 8 trillion, it's just, we're ahead, that's ahead of Japan and Germany. I mean, and it's catching up fast to China. And again, a lot of nation states do fit in that, but it is coming in, the shutting down of hospitals, the shutting down of networks, of organizations, of factory floors, and coming in through weird ways that, the IoT again, something that we've never stopped and looked at in a lot of security because it was there, it was separated. We don't have to worry as much about it. We've got to start worrying about it as it's coming in. So what do we see as our advisory motivations? Financial, $8 trillion. Hey, of course there's financial. Ransom payments from that, fraud, malware as a service revenue. So somebody writes a great malware program and you can go out on the dark web and go, I want to attack blah. You can go find it, you can get it, you can buy it, somebody will do it for you. And a lot of these are using web services to do this. Cryptojacking, stealing it, and that was one of the slides that Jamie had showing the amount of money that had been stolen in cryptocurrency. And the controlling infrastructure, mass spam emails. Hey, if I can send out 1 million emails and I get 5 people responding, I've won. If I could get 5 people that want to give me $1,000 each for 10 minutes worth of work, we're moving on. Malware command and control, virtual machines where they're able to spin things up and keep them going. Network usage, disruption. Some of this is just, hey, I've got 10 minutes in the morning. It's a Sunday morning. What am I going to do? I could read the paper, have a cup of coffee, or try to take somebody's network down. Espionage, trying to actually figure something out, get something from it, whether it's nation state or maybe something as simple as corporate espionage. I'm Coke, I want to get the Pepsi formula, or vice versa. We're trying to work through it. And to influence operations, maybe you want something to fail in a certain way, or the attacker's trying to do something to be able to move their agenda on. And so what's our methods of initial compromise? And as you see here, right, what Jamie spent a lot of time talking about, phishing, social engineering. This is where we're still seeing a lot of our attacks coming in and a lot of the work, whether it's through password spray, and there's a lot of ways to protect that, trying to slow down, making sure that we've got MFA, vulnerabilities, whether these are 0-day or, we've seen the announcements where somebody will come up and go, hey, this was attacked, and you'll see it in the news. And they'll come back and they'll be like, patches have been out for a year and it's not been touched. There's still open SSL problems out there that people haven't come into. General misconfigurations, it's hard. IT's hard. Making things right is hard. And it takes one mistake. You could do 556 of the 557 steps right. You miss that one step, it's there. It may be able to be found. You may not realize you left port 52783 open when you shouldn't have, and somebody's able to come in. And supply chain, this one's one of our hardest ones to do, is how do we stop that? I need to buy Broadcom chips. I need to buy Cisco equipment. I need to buy Netgear. I need to buy stuff. I need to buy servers. I need to buy other things coming in. How do we stop that? And that's coming back to that defense in depth, making sure that we're able to work along the whole line. And so what are we seeing in these attack notifications? As we see here, and we're looking at this, 42% are successful attacks are identity attacks. 29% ransomware encounters. C here is 25% successful targeted phishing attempts. And this is ones where we're low on like, hey, I know the CEO, I know the corporation. Email addresses are out there. You could find them so you can make it look legitimate. Make it look like you're really going out and coming from somebody. And D here is 4% business email compromise, which is that step from doing the targeted phishing onto the capability of asking for that $5,000 or to wire $1.5 million. When I first started in it and we'd see those, you know, it used to be like, hey, send me $1,000. Now they're getting up to the 250K or up to millions of dollars. And it's just crazy that we're seeing those kind of funds coming out of organizations without being able to stop that. So insights on phishing, and we've seen a lot of this through today, but we see involving phish techniques. You'd seen a bunch of the ones Jamie had showed where they're getting smarter. They're making them look just like a real email. They're making it look like, hey, UND, maybe it isn't University of North Dakota that it sends out, but it's got UNVER, we're missing the I and somebody doesn't catch it, and they click on it and they give out their password. Things along those lines are pretty easy. Adversary in the middle attacks, where somebody's sitting in the middle of it, like, hey, I'm on the Wi-Fi, right? And you're thinking you're on the Wi-Fi, but there's somebody in the middle able to hand you a certificate to be able to start taking a look at that data in between. One-time password bots, being able to come in, click on something, you give a password, being able to steal it and then reuse that. Multi-factor auth. I don't know how many of your organizations, or I don't know if UND has it, but when you start coming into a multi-factor, if not configured right, all of a sudden your end user starts seeing this prompt. Did you do this? Did you do this? Do you want to sign on? Do you want to sign on? And eventually what do your users do? They look at it and they go, yes, yes, yes. And you're like, it's 10 at night. You're not doing anything. Why are you clicking yes? So working ways to prevent that, because your end users and your customers are just not used to all this, and they want to make life easy, and so they'll start seeing this and start just doing it without thinking all the way through. And token replay, where we see something along the network, I as an adversary could take this token, I can bundle it up, and then I can replay it to a website. I can replay it to an auth and say, hey, I'm not Sean, you know, I'm Joe Bob down the way, and I've got rights because I'm the CEO that I could come in and have the rights to whatever other stuff we can do. And so how to protect against 99% of these attacks, right? Multi-factor auth. Even though we do have that idea of our end users getting tired, it is a very quick and easy way of preventing it. Zero trust. I got to slide in that in a little bit, but making sure like every time the user comes in, you're making sure that where they're coming from and what they're doing is legitimate for them. They're not just, I'm not just saying, Sean, and I know Sean can do it, and we let Sean in the house, and Sean can just go open every door and check all of it, you know, and our safes are open. We're going, hey, if Sean's gonna go open that door over there into our bedroom, we wanna make sure Sean has the right to that. That's a lot of, Dr. Kim had talked about that in the IoT devices and making sure that the authentication and the authentication and authorization, thank you, yeah, that you've got it set so that you've got both of them and you're checking that user. Extended detection, XDR, so antivirus, making sure that you're coming in, collecting that data, being able to stop the simple stuff. Keep up to date. We just talked about that, right? Hey, firmware. I mean, if your firmware is 10 years out of date, there's probably something that's been fixed in there. So you want to make sure you're updating, whether it's, hey, they've actually removed the passwords out of it. They've closed holes, things along those lines. And then just general protection of data. And we talked about that with your data compliance, of trying to figure out what's important to the business, what's important to the end users, where we start labeling that, how we start making sure that we don't lose that data maliciously or accidentally. I mean, not everything done is done on purpose. Every once in a while, somebody will click, hey, I need to send an email to John Smith, and they select the wrong John Smith. We want to make sure that when that data is going outside of our organization, that we're able to check that and stop it. And so identity attacks in perspective, look at this. 99% of identity attacks are password attacks, right? And this 1% here, this little slice, oh yeah, nothing there, the little Pac-Man trying to go for that little dot. MFA, post-auth attacks, and infrastructure compromise. So this here with the breach replay, password spray, and phishing. And this is where you get it, right? If I'm a attacker and I want to go for something and I log in and I go, hey, Sean and his password is password, and I know it because it's out there, and I log in and then I get an MFA prompt, I maybe click it hoping Sean clicks yes on his phone or whatever it's doing. I don't do it. What's the attacker going to do? He's going to go to the next person and the next person and the next person. They're going to grab the ones that they can get. So if we can stop 99% of those attacks by just setting up some MFA, it's easy win for organizations. And this is from the Microsoft Digital Defense Report. Microsoft did just release this 2 weeks ago, where they do go through a lot of the things we've seen within the M365 and Azure environment. So how should technology providers help, right? I'm getting the playoff music. The shared responsibility. So we're making sure that we as an organization, Google does it, Amazon does it, Oracle does it, we're all doing it, that we address the cybersecurity threats that we can on our stuff. The technology provides, and then we're shifting left with it to where we're making sure that we're trying earlier in the code to protect that, to protect the stuff that's coming up. So when we talk about zero trust, the idea of protecting everything, right? So you log in as Sean, all right, you're Sean now. Do you have rights to that endpoint? Do you have rights to that app? Maybe Sean has rights to Exchange Online, but Sean doesn't have rights to the Salesforce. Do you have rights to that infrastructure? Do you have rights to work on that network into that specific data? And so we're working through that zero trust to make sure we're authenticating and checking them every step along the way. Doing this, though, we're not prompting them every time to log back in, because your end users are never happy with that. So this has got a lot of numbers on it, but there's a lot of stuff in here about 90% of organizations are exposed to at least one attack path. This one down here is pretty interesting. Less than 1% of organizational assets are of high interest to attackers. So as you've got attackers coming into organizations and working through the network, a lot of the stuff they see they don't care about, but they're looking, when they get in there, they're able to move around and be able to find stuff that they want and jump around and find it. And so how have we seen some of this new technology help our defenders? AI allows for a paradigm shift. So on the good side, we allow AI to have the continuous access and improved posture, investigate in response to threats and learn it, and improve productivity and collaboration. And we've always had this in the background with machine learning. We've just been advancing it with the large language models and stuff. And so we do have attackers working through AI, being able to do more quicker to us. And so we're really working to try to cut that down. And as we see, the attackers have an asymmetric advantage, right? They've ever expanding attack surface. 1 in 3 open cybersecurity jobs, use of AI by the attackers, growing number of threat groups, and fragmented security tools make it hard as an organization to win as the security side. Thank you.
Questions for Sean?
I will answer one thing really quick that he asked Jamie earlier about getting certified in security. I will say, if that is a career you're looking at, one of the first things to start looking at is understanding operating systems and networking. So the CompTIA tests, the CompTIA like Network Plus, Linux Plus, very good starting place to start learning on it. Because as Dr. Kim had talked about too, is TCP, UDP, you've got your smishing, you've got to start looking at your different protocols. All of that's a huge part when you're looking at cyber defense and penetration testing.
Questions, please? Maybe I should start. How is Microsoft handling after the CrowdStrike? What is your perspective of that event? Anything that you guys learned after the event?
Loaded questions. The answer to that is we'd really taken some time to take a look back at where the failings were. We worked with CrowdStrike to start figuring out where we can start making sure that stuff like that doesn't happen again. And doing our best to prevent that so that when if anything like that ever does happen again, we have it going. But it is, it's hard. It's hard, yes.
Sorry to ask that. Any other questions? No? If not, we'll thank the speaker by giving him.